Hey, it's Derek with Gold and Black Radio, and I just came from my local Academy Sports and Outdoors store. The most festive gear of the year is back, guys, at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Don't miss the limited edition Magellan Outdoor Christmas Market Collection only at Academy. Get exclusive 2025 gear and gifts for all your holiday parties, fun family photos, and Christmas morning traditions. Check out the entire collection, from matching PJs and holiday print fishing shirts and dresses to exclusive new Mossy Oak Snowdrift camo styles and more. Shop in-store or at academy.com. Need it fast? Get same-day delivery powered by DoorDash. Let your holiday fun begin with Magellan Outdoors Christmas Market Collection only at Academy.
Welcome into another edition of Gold and Black Radio. I'm your host, Derek Schulltz, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. It's the penultimate game of, unfortunately, another long football season for the Boilermakers, but it's a first-time trip to a Big Ten newcomer as Purdue heads to Seattle to battle Washington. We'll talk Boilers and Huskies in just a few with Tom Dienhart and Dub Jellison. We'll get into the history of these programs. There's a lot of connective tissue, actually, between Purdue and Washington. You wouldn't think so because West Lafayette and Seattle, not a lot of direct similarities or comparisons there, but we'll talk about that with Alan Carpet coming up later on the show. And we'll have our usual Friday night roundtable as we get the entire goldandblack.com group together. But first, wanted to give a much-deserved shout-out to our great Gold and Black Radio sponsors like Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics and the official credit card for Purdue fans. Boiler Up, East End Grill and Ripple and Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. The Whitaker Inn, this Midwestern oasis, is perfect for relaxing staycation or a weekend getaway. Escape from the ordinary at the Whitaker Inn. Sand Valley Resort, as the seasons change, escape to Sand Valley. Over 12,000 acres of prehistoric sand dunes transform into a breathtaking winter retreat. Glide through snow-covered trails, feel the thrill of fat tire biking, or simply find stillness by a crackling fire. With cozy accommodations and farm-to-table dining, Sand Valley is where adventure and connection come together. Book your winter escape today at sandvalley.com. And finally, the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research. The Purdue Institute for Cancer Research has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Purdue brings together world-class Boilermaker scientists from all across the university, conducting cutting-edge research that uncovers new ways to prevent, diagnose, and treat cancer. With your support, cancer research saves lives. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. Let's welcome on the goldandblack.com Brain Trust, Tom Dienhart and Dub Jellison, goldandblack.com football writers. And guys, let's kind of get right to it. I like always going back, and obviously I'm a goldandblack.com subscriber. I mean, how could you not be with all the great covers that you guys do? And I go back and I read all of your stuff that you put up there. And Tom, I saw your article about the Purdue yardage output and the juxtaposition with the scoring output. You know, you would think that those two would be a little bit more connected than they are. And maybe some of this is due to stat padding while trailing late a little bit. But you wrote about the fact that Purdue is 10th in the Big Ten in yards per game. Pretty good, right? Middle of the pack, because there's 18 teams now in this league. But 16th in scoring, which obviously is near the bottom floor. How do you think those two areas misalign so greatly for them this season? And does a lot of it date back to just the red zone issues that we've talked about on this show?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Derek. The red zone is the worst in the Big Ten. They only score on 50% of their drives into the red zone. So touchdowns, that is. So, yeah, it's just non-productive. They've settled for field goals too often in the red zone, and they can't punch the ball across the goal line to get hit pay there for 6 points, right? That's the reason. That's the disconnect there. The yardage looks good, but then the scoring, which obviously is really the only stat that matters. How many points you score, how many points you give up. And the scoring is sunk to 16.2 points per game in conference games. And again, that's the issue, Derek. You know, I think some of it's lack of physicality, the inability to run the football that well in tight quarters is a big part of it too. And you know, it's something we've lamented for a while, is just a lack of playmakers. You know, not having George Burhan, the tight end, certainly hurts in the red zone. He'd be a dynamic weapon down there, right? And then you've had Maccabee off the field for a few games now as well. And again, I think that's part of it too. Again, lack of physicality, I think, and lack of playmakers have been two big issues for the team's struggles in the red zone this year.
Yeah, no question about that. Dub, the Boilers will get a reunion with their old coach and Ryan Walters. He's the defensive coordinator in Washington. I think we all know clearly he was not ready to be a head football coach, but he has been a strong DC. And again, you know, Washington's results, I think, back that up, only giving up 20 points per game. is he back in a role where he belongs? There's kind of that old saying, like some guys are just born to be coordinators. And that's not to say that Ryan Walters might not eventually get another chance to lead a team of his own somewhere down the line, but he seems to be, given the results at Illinois and so far at Washington, it seems to be a really good fit running a major college defense.
Yeah, and I think everyone kind of realized pretty early that Ryan Walters might have been in a little too far over his head, right, at Purdue. There's just so much that goes with being a head coach and making that jump from not being a coordinator for all that long. I think it was 5 years, 6 years, maybe at most, and jumping into a Power 5 gig. I think is really difficult for anybody. And Ryan Walters obviously struggled here at Purdue, but I think, being able to go back and kind of reset and just run a defense, I think that'll be good for him in his career. I think, you would hope that one day he gets another opportunity. Maybe it's a group of 5 school and he can work his way up that way. Or maybe he gets another Power 4 opportunity. We don't know, but I think this is kind of where he's going to make his mark at the college game right now, just being the defensive coordinator and a phenomenal one at that. I think that, the results kind of speak for themselves. Going back to Mizzou and then at Illinois, obviously, and then now at Washington, he's kind of picked things back up. So, he's taking steps in the right direction. He's back on the rebound, but it's a pretty cool storyline. I think for some of the guys that have returned for Purdue, getting to play their former coach, and you would think that Ryan Walters is he's pretty juiced for this game, wanting to get his revenge on them.
Yeah, it's a little weird because, Dub mentioned the fact that obviously there was some cross there at Mizzou. But it is a little bit weird, isn't it, Tom, that here's Barry Odom, who I know is much younger probably than people think or that he looks. But he's very much an old school coach, whereas I think we would, even in the short sample size that we had Ryan Walters in West Lafayette, I think everybody knows that he was more of like a new age sort of guy. And yet they're buddies, according to what he wrote this week. Like they're friends, and they really kind of connect on a football level when it feels like what they've brought to the table as head coaches, just from an attitude standpoint, has been and an organization standpoint has been very different.
Yeah, you're right. Old school's just a great label to put on Barry Odom, an old soul for a guy who's not even 50 years old, right? And just listen to him talk, and he walks the walk, too, hard, smart, and tough. But yeah, they've got a pretty extensive history, honestly. Going back to the Missouri connection, that's where it really began for those two. And then they worked together, I believe, at Memphis as well. So yeah, it's funny. I remember when Ryan got hired, I remember doing a story trying to build a little profile on him, and I remember calling Barry Odom to get a comment about Ryan Walters. So there you go. So yeah, he talked about it this week at Monday's press conference as well. And yeah, that's not the only storyline that's sort of underneath the surface here. Of course, Barry Odom's youngest brother, right, Brian Odom, is the inside linebackers coach at Washington. There's 3 Odom brothers. Of course, Brad is the oldest, who's the director of recruiting at Purdue. And there's Barry. Barry's the middle child. He's the Peter Brady. He's the Jam Brady. And then you got Brian, of course, is the youngest. And had some fun with the coach this week. Asked him who his parents are going to be rooting for, of course. And he very fessed up and kind of hung his head and goes, well, I guess I've just never been the favorite. And there's dynamics in every family, right? Maybe there was more there from what he talked about in his answer. But anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun and have those types of storylines sort of serving as subplots to this matchup on Saturday.
This Husky team, Dub, coming off a loss to Wisconsin, and I'm not really sure if that's a good or a bad thing for Purdue, right? Because sometimes you think, they lose a game like that and it raises your eyebrows. Oh, maybe they're gettable, but then they lose a game like that and then it wakes them up and then they're ready for the next opponent. But regardless, at the very least, is this a game where you enter thinking that the Boilers at least have a puncher's chance, unlike last week's opponent with Ohio State?
Yeah. A lot higher opportunity for Purdue this week. Even going out west and going to Seattle, it's never an easy place to play, and this is going to be a really hard game. But I think everyone that was fairly reasonable, looked at Ohio State game and looks at that Indiana game coming up, is like Purdue's got slim to no chance at all. I think you can probably talk yourself into thinking Purdue could have a chance on Saturday, especially, just because Washington has kind of stumbled a bit lately, lost 2 of the last 3. I know both of them were on the road, and they had a win over Illinois sandwiched in between them. But this is still a Washington team that I thought prior to last week, I was like, they could potentially sneak into the college football playoff, or at least be in the conversation, be in that top 15, 16 teams, right? But, I think last week kind of soiled his chances. So Washington's a really good team. He's got one of my favorite guys to watch in all of college football, Damon Williams, at quarterback. I'm really high on him. I think he's going to be special over the next year or two as he continues to mature and progress. So Purdue's got a really big challenge ahead of him, and then it'll be interesting to see how they kind of maneuver the whole travel situation as well.
Yeah, and Tom, speaking of Washington, these programs, Washington and Purdue, are tied together, of course, from that 2000 Rose Bowl in the minds of Purdue fans. But I think really Washington shares a bit of that Rose Bowl link with Michigan as well. I mean, in the 80s and 90s, I know they had at least 4, maybe 5 times where they met up in the Rose Bowl. I know they aren't as iconic as USC or as flamboyant as Oregon, but for a guy that, you covered this sport on a national level for years and years, do you have respect for what Washington is as a program and the proud history there? And I don't know, the gold helmets, right? The Husky dog, it's cool, right? I always thought UW was cool.
Yeah, I agree, Derek. It's a program I've always sort of liked from afar, sort of likened it to a Big Ten school in a lot of ways, a big enrollment, a giant stadium, 70,000 seats, and tradition that, yeah, it's not on par with maybe USC, but it's not that far behind, and you referenced, it's been a long time, I guess, but I remember those early 90s teams with Steve Entman and Napoleon Kaufman, those type of guys, Don James, the dog father, they would call him. He was our iconic coach, and they won a share of a national title there. And really, Purdue's the cradle of quarterbacks, but Washington's produced a lot of great quarterbacks over the years. Sonny Six Killer, of course, Warren Moon, Kerry Conklin, Mark Brunell, Chris Chandler. They've had just a litany of NFL quarterbacks, probably as many as anybody in the nation, honestly, and just a great tradition. And it's going to be a great environment out there. I've seen a couple games out there over the years, and yeah, they can come to the game on the lake, and the crew team can give people rides from their boats to the docks, and they got the cantilevers over both sides of the stands there, and sort of keeps the sound contained, and that increases the volume. So it's going to be a heck of an environment. It's going to be nighttime as well by the time the second half kicks off, and yeah, just a very proud program, and it's kind of neat having be part of the Big Ten now, honestly.
Yeah, those places where you have like the mountains and water, it always makes me a little bit jealous because we have neither really in central Indiana, right?
We got the Wabash River. Hey,
that's right.
Real quick, the Husky dog is nicknamed Dub, so how about that?
How about that? Yeah, all right.
I told Tom he's got to take a selfie with him.
He wants me to kidnap Dubs and bring him back.
Yeah, you gotta get one with Dub to send to Dub for sure. I'll leave you with this, Dub. I know we always kind of try to shoehorn in some recruiting, and it's funny because like the whole JUCO thing, right, with the transfer portal, it almost feels like an antiquated thing. Like, what JUCO guys? What do you need them for anymore? But you can get good production right away from JUCO guys. Still talent to be had from that group, and it sounds like Purdue is busy targeting a few of those junior college players.
Yeah, they've really kind of dove into that this week, offering several JUCO guys. Dax Knowles, he's a guy that was offered a few weeks ago from Iowa Western Community College. Started his career at Oklahoma as a walk-on. He was a legacy there. And he's kind of turned himself into a D1 prospect this year at the JUCO level. So he's a guy that will be on campus later this month. Ty Terrell, a cornerback from East Central Community College, he'll be on campus here next weekend. Dre Riley is a safety from Northwest Mississippi College, or Community College, excuse me. And he's kind of playing a visit too. So it's really that defensive back room that I think Purdue's trying to shore up. I saw some people talk on our boards today about, the balance between high school and portal and JUCO guys. I think, I think Purdue will still, target portal guys in the secondary. I think that's almost a certainty at this point. But, I think being able to get JUCO guys who at least have the possibility of being able to come in and step in and help you from day one, I think that's worth a look for some of these guys, because very few true freshmen are going to come in and play valuable minutes for you at a Power 4 school. So Purdue's doing their due diligence and looking at quite a few guys. All of them you can see at goldenblack.com. But, it's really interesting because we hadn't really seen JUCO recruiting up until this point, which is kind of when things start to pick up for a lot of these guys after coaches can see their film and whatnot. So Purdue's going to be looking for some guys and potentially get some guys here in the next few weeks leading up to National Signing Day.
Tom and Dub have the best Purdue football and recruiting coverage on the internet at Tom Dienhart1, at Dub Jellison on X, and of course right here at goldandblack.com. We'll have the roundtable coming up a little bit later on with you guys, but also post-game show too. Don't forget Tom and Dub on the goldandblack.com's post-game show following the Washington game and every single Purdue football game this season. Guys, we'll talk in a couple of minutes. Thanks for the insights as always.
Thank you, Derek.
Yes.
That's Tom Dienhart and Dub the human Jellison, not Dub the Washington mascot, even though I'm looking forward to seeing that selfie. This portion of Gold and Black Radio brought to you by East End Grill and Ripple and Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. Tom had the chance earlier this week to catch up with Tony Castricone. He is the voice of the Huskies, a conversation about Purdue and UW 25 years after their Rose Bowl matchup. And here's that conversation.
All right, really pleased to be joined by the voice of the Washington Huskies, Tony Castricone. Tony, thank you very much for giving us some of your time. Let's jump right in. Tell our viewers and listeners what they can expect from the Husky offense on Saturday.
That's a funny question coming off a game in Madison where the Husky offense didn't look like the Husky offense. After the loss to the Badgers on Saturday, Washington's now 6-3 on the season. In their 6 wins, they're averaging 45 points per game. In their 3 losses, they're averaging 7.7 points per game. So, that's quite the canyon of a difference between when they're playing at their peak performance and when they're not. I think it's one thing to struggle against Ohio State. Literally everybody in the country has struggled against Ohio State. It's another to just have the turnover problems they had at Michigan and at Wisconsin and kind of see a couple of opportunities slip away. So, I don't think we know fully what to expect from the Washington offense other than, they've got players all over the field. They've got really, really good talent at every phase of the offense, starting with the quarterback. Demond Williams throws at an exceptionally high completion percentage, but also a very high yards per attempt. So he's not just doing the check down game. He can really be explosive down the field with his arm. And then if all heck breaks loose, he can get out of the pocket and scramble. He's got 12 rushes of 20-plus yards this year, which leads the nation. Forget every running back out there. Like Demond Williams, the scrambling quarterback, is very explosive in the running game. Then at running back, Jonah Coleman came into the season as a preseason All-American candidate. In fact, he was a CBS midseason All-American in all-purpose, not just for his rushing ability, but his ability to catch passes out of the backfield as well. He got nicked up in the game against Wisconsin on Saturday and did not play in the second half. And so that limited them to backup running back Adam Muhammad, who we really like his potential. He's a true sophomore, and he's not intended, I don't think, to be an every down guy quite yet, and that's what he was forced into being in the second half of the game against Wisconsin. At wide receiver, number 1 receiver, Denzel Boston, got nicked up as well, kind of got his ankle twisted on a punt return and was not fully available the rest of the game. He did come back in for some moments here and there, but that meant that the offense at times had 3 true freshmen lining up, which is really something. They recruited the heck out of last year, and it's a good thing because a lot of those guys are playing as true freshmen. But Raiden Vinesbright and Des Roebuck are 2 of the best true freshman wide receivers in all of college football. They've both had exceptional seasons. Omari Evans, the Penn State transfer, gives you a little bit of depth there. And then on the offensive line, they finally got healthy coming into the Wisconsin game for the first time in weeks. And then, just more attrition on the offensive line. Drew has a party, the right tackle, ended up leaving the game with an injury. Landon Hatchett, the starting center, had a club on his right hand and was trying to snap with his offhand. He did for a couple of series before that just wasn't going as well as it needed to. So they brought in the backup, Zach Henning. And, the left side of the line, Carver Willis and John Mills, those guys are coming off of injuries. So, I would not say that Washington's offense is anywhere close to what Wisconsin has had to deal with now playing a fourth string quarterback. But the Huskies have struggled with injuries this year, and it has hampered what otherwise has been a really explosive looking offense at times.
Okay, Tony, defensively, kind of give us a sense of what to expect from Washington there. Of course, the Husky D is led by a familiar name to Boilermaker fans, Ryan Walters. So just sort of give us an idea of what to expect defensively from you guys.
And also an inside linebacker coach in Brian
Correct.
Odom, who is quite familiar with your head coach. So,
Correct.
I think there's a lot of familiarity between the two programs, which is fun and interesting, especially given the fact that this is the first time they're meeting as Big Ten Conference teams. They haven't played in a long time, but there is some familiarity between the individuals, which is cool. And Ryan Walters, I think, has done a really good job of coming in, and there's not a ton of depth on the defensive side of the ball, but he's worked with the pieces that we have to do a fairly good job of stopping the run, hasn't let teams get too explosive. And Washington has really been one of the better defenses in the Big Ten Conference in red zone defense, in touchdown defensive percentage. So, they've been good in that regard. The edge room has been a little bit thin due to some injuries, but they've got some good edges in Zach Durfee and Jacob Lane. The defensive line has been really solid with a little bit of depth there that they're able to rotate in. And then it's the inside linebacker position that's been pretty banged up as well. The back half of the defense has been really good. They got two long corners that are both 6'4", have great wingspans, both really good at breaking up passes, coming up with interceptions. The safety room has been solid. You got a transfer from Northern Arizona there in Alex McLaughlin, who I think is just a really fun football player to watch, a guy that makes plays at all three levels. And then on the defensive side of the ball, there's a lot of true freshmen rotating in there as well. Zadrius Rainey-Saleh, number 23, has really flashed since he's come off an ACL injury from his senior year of high school. He's a true freshman at inside linebacker who they really like and think he's going to be a great one. And then you'll see them go with some 3 safety looks sometimes where they bring in a true freshman in Ryland Dillard-Allen that chose Washington over Alabama. So, they've got a lot of talent on that side of the ball. Again, not super deep there, but a really good defensive play caller in Ryan Walters, who's done a nice job of helping limit the explosivity of the opposing offenses.
Okay, Tony, kickoff 4 p.m. Central Time Saturday. How do you see the game unfolding? Washington's about a 16.5-point favorite, I think.
Yeah, no idea. Only because, it's college football, and I don't think anybody expected to see what we saw last weekend in Madison. That being said, here's one thing that I'm of the opinion of that, I don't know that there's a whole lot of data to back it up, but, you mentioned a spread, and there's conventional wisdom that home field is worth 3 points over a neutral site. I would say in Washington Big Ten conference games against Midwest opponents, I would say that goes up to maybe 7 to 10 points. I feel like we perform about 20 points worse on the road than we would at home. That's just kind of the way it's gone the last couple of years. And Washington's got one of the great home field winning streaks in the country. Of course, that was snapped against Ohio State. They'd won 22 straight before falling to the number 1 team in the country, but they've won every home game since then. So, we're talking about a program that's only lost 1 time since the end of 2021 in its home stadium. And I just think it's a talented roster that is really hungry for a win. It was a long 2 weeks coming off the bye where they played well against Illinois at home. And then they just kind of laid an egg at Wisconsin. We're really unhappy with the way that they played. So I know it's going to be a highly motivated Washington football team at home.
Yeah, it'll be a good afternoon for football, too. Maybe a chance for rain, it looks like. But look forward to getting out there. I'll look for you in the press box, Tony. We appreciate you stopping by and dropping some UW knowledge on us.
Really appreciate Tony joining Tom Dienhart earlier this week for the opponent preview. Washington and Purdue coming up tomorrow afternoon in Seattle. It'll be a long trip on Saturday to the Pacific Northwest for an area that is known for rain, but meteorologist Chad Evans has your forecast for the game in Seattle, and I'm not going to spoil the surprise. I'll let the expert do it.
Hi everyone, meteorologist Chad Evans here with a look at your forecast as the Purdue Boilermakers take on the Washington Huskies out in the Pacific Northwest. Now it's going to be a mostly cloudy day. Now temperatures will be in the upper 50s in the afternoon, but towards like kickoff they'll be in the mid 50s and they'll stay there through the evening with some scattered showers. Coverage should run about 30 to 40%. The heavier, steadier rain should be late in the night and into Sunday, however. There'll be a south breeze, not too cold, but not too warm, and be aware you'll be dodging some showers at times as well. Boiler up.
Really appreciate Chad, as always, for providing the weather forecast for our Gold and Black radio shows each and every Friday. Check out Chad's weather blog on Substack, where he does an outstanding job with the local forecasts. Again, really appreciate Chad joining us every single week. This portion of Gold and Black Radio brought to you by Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics and official credit card for Purdue fans. Boiler up. Let's bring on our main man, Alan Karpick. He is the publisher of goldandblack.com for this week's historical perspective. And Alan, welcome. Purdue and UW actually have a deep history, considering that there, to the layman, there wouldn't be much connective tissue between West Lafayette, Indiana, and Seattle, Washington, right? But I think when you say Washington first and foremost, and Washington football, I would guess that a lot of fans still default to that 2000 Rose Bowl matchup. I actually watched some highlights of that game this week, and it's weird because everything from like the turn of the century before HDTV looks like it was filmed with a potato, so it looks like it was from 50 years ago and not 25. But it still feels. I mean, I remember thinking, and this was, I wasn't a Purdue fan or a Purdue alum or anything like that, but I remember sitting in Connecticut. I was a senior in high school during that time, and watching at home and being like, this is just surreal that Purdue is in Pasadena, like Purdue football. And even all these years later, I pop it back in, and it still feels like it's a game that didn't fully happen, even though I know that it happened, if that makes sense.
Well, anytime you have Keith Jackson on the call, you have a stealth bomber as the pregame show, and I got to live long enough to get to the Rose Bowl, so I'm good. I know. I mean, if you're a Purdue fan, it's only happened twice, and it was magical just to be there. Like I always say, Purdue got more mileage out of a loss in the Rose Bowl and a runner-up finish in the Final Four a couple of years ago, I think, than any school in history in terms of feel good, because it felt good despite the disappointing loss. But they did have a couple of moments, and if you go back and watch that tape, they had a great call from Keith Jackson, the great Keith Jackson, on the Drew Brees to Vinny Sutherland touchdown right before halftime. That made it worthwhile. And we had to DVR, or no, I didn't even DVR. I think I had a VHS tape to come home and watch it, though I was very fortunate to be out there with that for that game.
Well, besides that game, they also played in the Joe Tiller era Sun Bowl 2 or 3 seasons after. I think that might have been the 2002 team. Right. And then a bunch of home and homes, 70s and then the 80s, 90s, which you talk about bad timing, right? Because Washington was really good late 80s, early 90s, and Purdue was not so good. What do you remember about those matchups? Exclusively won by
Tom already talked about. I was going to say Tom already talked about that, but 87 to 90, they played them 4 consecutive years. Can you imagine Fred Akers takes the job? That wasn't the only reason it didn't work under Fred Akers, but it didn't help, because you played Washington 4 consecutive years, 87 to 90. Each year that Fred Akers was at the helm at Purdue, he played the Huskies, and Washington, of course, won the national championship, a share of the national championship in the 1990 season. Most of those games, a couple of those games were competitive, but Washington had the upper hand. But it was the 71-72 games that really, I know we're digging deep here, but they were really monumental games that kind of changed the fortunes of Purdue football from where it was in the late 60s, when it was a consistent top 10 ranked team. They go to Washington, lose on national TV. You got to remember, not many games were on national TV those days, in a heartbreaker. Then they blow a 21-0 lead at home. Can you imagine this? Gary Danielson, not necessarily fleet of foot, had over 200 yards rushing in the first half. He also had a bad head cold, didn't play in the second half. Purdue blows a 21-0 lead and falls 22-21 And yes, Sonny Six Killer, number 6. Can you imagine that number? That's what he was, and he was terrific in that game as well. But that was a long time ago, but I still haven't forgotten it.
Wanted to mention the 02 Sun Bowl because that's the last meeting
Yeah.
between these two schools, and I think it just kind of gets lost to history a little bit. Purdue had a somewhat disappointing year that year, but you went back and looked at, and I needed the refresher course. I remember they played a really weird game in South Bend where I think they might have fumbled a kickoff and a bunch of weird crap because it's South Bend, right? There's always weird crap that happens. The ball always luck of the Irish and the whole thing. But they had a ton of close games that season, and it appeared to me that team was a lot closer to maybe being like a 9-3 team than what they were. I think they ended up for a 6-6 team, of course, 7-6 after winning that Sun Bowl.
Yeah, good research, Derek. It was because you lose to Notre Dame. That was the Montreal Low Bowl because Montreal had a couple fumbles, and he had done so well for Purdue and really never saw the light of day after that. He had a fumbled kickoff. I think they gave up 14 points in a row to Notre Dame in a game they should have had. Remember that it was the Craig Kenzel touchdown pass at Ohio State.
Yeah.
Home 10-6 loss. They lost a heartbreaker to Michigan at home. They lost a heartbreaker to Iowa as well. So this was a team that was within a standard deviation, less than a standard deviation for you math people out there, for Purdue having a great year. And then they win that Sun Bowl when they were down 17-0 in that game, come back and win that game. The same exact score in the Rose Bowl, 34-24. And the other thing was it got Purdue's expectations so high. That's where Joe Tiller came up with the phrase, you got to manage expectation, because heading into 2003, a lot of optimism. Purdue loses the season over to Bowling Green, season opener, I should say, but goes on to have a really good season. But yes, 2002 was a season of near misses.
Last thing here, I did want to fit in, if we could, a basketball question because it's kind of a crossover season, right? A really big win for the Boilers. Tonight was Thursday night, the first time that I was really directly impacted by the YouTube TV carriage dispute, because I went just like I always do, and I'm like, oh yeah, Purdue Alabama, that's going to be on, and then realized, oh wait, it's ESPN2 and I can't watch it. So I brought up Rob Blackman and the radio called the game, and Rob does a great job, of course, but I was without visuals. But man, a top 10 true road win. And we know Alabama, Alan, like, sometimes you win these games early on and you're like, I don't know how good this team is going to be. I think that win is going to age tremendously for Purdue, because I think Alabama is every bit a Final Four contender.
Yeah, it's a game that gets you a number 1 seed if you're Purdue. Now, again, Purdue's got to do some work between now and Selection Sunday. I got to give Rollin Winger, my good friend who watches and listens to this show all the time. I got to give him a shout out, because I had to go out to his to the yacht club to watch him to watch at his domicile. That was a lot of fun. It sent me scrambling a little bit because me and records. It's a little bit of I use the term kangaroo statistic, which I don't know what that is, Derek. If you can tell me what that is, I'd like to know. But it was Purdue's first win over a top 10 team on its home court since my 5th-year senior. Yes, I wasn't a redshirt. I was a 5th-year senior at Purdue. December 4th, 1982. Purdue beats Louisville 89-83, and Steve Reed was unstoppable. But the funny thing about that is they've only had 2 other games against top 10 teams on the road in the non-conference, of course, that being North Carolina in 92 and Memphis in 2005. So that, I guess, is a kangaroo statistic.
Yeah, I'm not as surprised, because the Big Ten ACC Challenge was notorious for giving Purdue a crappy matchup, it felt like, in most years. So you knew they weren't going to get like the – I remember Duke came to Mackey, of course, one time, but for the most part, you weren't going to get a great game there. I actually Googled kangaroo statistics, and all that came up was that they can reach speeds of up to 40 miles an hour, and they can leap 30.
There you go.
So that's –
I don't know what it is, but I put that on our message boards just to I'm sure somebody's going to enlighten me in what that is, but I think my dad used to use that term. It is a kangaroo. It could be, you could use another words with B and S, but again, a great win for Purdue, and you watch that game, and you didn't unfortunately get to watch it, but this team, Braden Smith, he also took a big step to being a first-team All-American again, and maybe National Player of the Year, because he dominated the game, and Trey Kaufman-Renn coming back and scoring 17 points in the first half. Smith, I think, had 21 in the second half. This is a very good basketball team. We already know that. We were all worried about the rebounding, and I think they out-rebounded Alabama 52-28. But there are games to be played. We'll see how the Boilermakers do, but I think this is a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah, and the collective freak out from not being able to shake Oakland.
Imagine that, Derek.
It's 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, guys. Everybody chill.
But it's going to get more postcards from Brian on the way home. I mean, I think he'll hit Buc-ee's on the way back. Brian is great about he's never too high. It's not his job to be excited when Purdue wins, but there's still a little bit more fun, I think, maybe on the way home. We'll look forward to that as well. I've been loving those postcards. He had a couple great lines, as he always does. But a great win for Purdue tonight in basketball, and it would take a huge upset. This was a mild upset today. It'd take a huge upset, as you guys have already documented, for Purdue to win at Washington on Saturday evening in Eastern time.
Well, Alan, we'll have the Gold and Black post-game show after every game this season, including Saturday afternoon in Seattle. So check those shows out on many of these same platforms. And Alan, we'll bring you back here in just a few minutes for the roundtable to get that thing going. Thanks so much.
All right. Sounds good, man. Thanks.
That's our friend Alan Karpick, publisher of goldenblack.com. This portion of Gold and Black Radio brought to you by Sand Valley Resort with cozy accommodations and farm-to-table dining. Sand Valley is where adventure and connection come together. Book your winter escape today at sandvalley.com. And also brought to you by the Whitaker Inn for unparalleled comfort and cuisine. Visit the Whitaker Inn. Now let's hear from our friends at BetMGM.
Hey, college football fans, it's time to lock in on those Saturday showdowns with BetMGM. Whether you're betting the underdog or riding with the favorite, take your excitement to the next level with a college football odds boost token. Log into your BetMGM account to receive your token. Then place a bet on any college football matchup with your activated token. If your boosted bet hits, you'll score a bigger payout. Claim your odds boost token and be sure to activate it before placing your bet. The game is about to kick off, so feel the rush and own the moment. BetMGM, make it legendary. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 and over only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. First bet offer for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel.
Welcome back to Gold and Black Radio. I'm your host, Derek Schulltz. Thanks so much for joining us as we get you set for Purdue and Washington, and also sprinkle in a little bit about those number 2 Boilermakers. Some people I saw in the polls. I don't care about the polls. I swear I don't care about the polls. I'm going to complain about the polls. I saw some people had Purdue outside of their top 5 this week. I don't know. Not saying that I'm qualified to vote for the polls, but I'm probably qualified enough to not have 5 teams ahead of Purdue in my top 5. I don't know. Just saying. I'll get off my soapbox. That's all I have to say about the polls. Let's bring back our buddies Tom Dienhart, Dub Jellison, Alan Karpick here on Gold and Black Radio to do roundtable to wrap up this edition of GBR. Guys, I heard somebody bring this up, and I thought it was interesting, so I wanted to present it to the group. Ohio State still has Michigan, so even though I don't, like I've said on this show, I don't think Michigan's that good, but that hasn't stopped them from beating Ohio State in the past couple of years. IU pretty much is a lock for 12-0 now that they got through State College, as much as it pains me to maybe say that with Bucket Weekend coming up here in a couple of weeks. They might be in this position where the Big Ten title game can really only hurt them if they're both 12-0, right? A Big Ten title would obviously be a much bigger deal to Indiana than it would be to Ohio State. I know they're obligated to play it regardless, so this is sort of like a hypothetical situation. But with this expanded playoff and calls for some, I think some of the SEC people want no automatic qualifiers. They just want all at-larges. Could we see these title games eventually be phased out or maybe look a lot different than they do right now? I guess I wanted to start there, Tom.
Yeah, I would like to see it happen, but there's so much money involved that these teams and these conferences get, and the SEC in particular, that it may be hard to take it off the table. But again, like you said, Derek, they prove no point. You like to call yourself the Big Ten champ. That has some heft and merit to it. But everybody wants to get to the college football playoff and try to win it all. And like you said, this could only hurt your chances. Each team's going to get in, win or lose, obviously, but your seeding for the loser could be obviously impacted. So, man, I could talk for hours about the insanity of the fact that a committee picks teams. I mean, I always say, can you imagine going to the NFL and going, NFL, we're going to have a committee pick the playoff teams. They would go, what? Why? I don't know. Again, the whole sport should be blown up. They should commingle the two biggest conferences, and just like the AFC and the NFC, make geographic divisions just like the NFL and play it just like the NFL. I mean, I don't think they'll ever get to that, but you'd have to blow up a lot of tradition. But again, there's just so much insanity to how this whole postseason's run that a lot of times it drives me crazy.
Yeah, I'm with you when it comes to that. Just the fact that, I mean, maybe, Alan, the solution would be if we see more expansion, that expands into what we call Championship Saturday and wipes out the SEC, ACC, Big Ten title games just because we're playing an additional round or maybe even additional 2 rounds of a college football playoff system.
Well, Tom deserves a huge pay raise, and he would be the czar of college football, which it definitely needs. He would be perfect for it. He's the right age, everything. No, as Tom said, the money talks in all this, and that's what it is. If they can figure out a way to, the Big Ten's about to ink a quote unquote private equity deal. Not going to be private equity, but my point is the money will do it. I don't know that we'll see it in the near term, but yeah, a lot of things point that way, and maybe 16 teams in the playoff helps it where you could really have. But the problem is too, you've got some weak leagues too. I mean, like Tom said, the Big Ten, SEC are at a level, but the ACC, can you imagine having an automatic qualifier for 2 or 3 ACC teams in a 16-team playoff? Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they solve it. And I think Tom eventually will be right, because I think economically they'll figure out a way to do it. They always seem to do it, but it's going to take some time to unravel a lot of these deals. And we may be all old and gray by the time that happens.
Yeah, man, the ACC, that feels to me like a league that just has 18 different Illinois, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like they're all like 8-4. Level teams. I'm really surprised that Miami, the bottom, has fallen out, because that actually looked like a team that had real talent.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think the deficiency there, is who their head coach is more than anything else. Dub, looking at the rest of this Big Ten slate, I mean, not a lot of games jumping out to me. I mean, Minnesota is good for PJ Fleck. They're 6-3, but I feel like they might be like the worst 6-3 football team that I've ever seen before. And I'm not just saying that because Purdue really outplayed them for 4 quarters in Minneapolis a couple weeks ago. Iowa USC, I think, could be interesting. Those are 2 teams that I've had trouble sort of figuring out. Like, I think they're both solidly good, but like how good? And that's going to be a tough trip for Iowa. They've had their tough games so far this year, seemingly at Kinnick, and now they're going to have to go out to the Coliseum.
I don't know what it is about Iowa. I'm always intrigued by their matchups when they play a top 25 team. I always think, Kirk Ferentz has those guys ready to play, and they're always going to give you a fight, like we saw last week. I thought Iowa was going to knock off Oregon. I told Tom, and he looked at me like I was crazy on Saturday before the game. But no, I mean, USC. I mean, this is Lincoln Riley's opportunity to try to make something happen and kind of close this thing out on a high note and see where they lay at the end of the regular season. Michigan Northwestern, maybe an interesting game. I don't know. Like you said, Derek, it's not an action-packed weekend for the Big Ten in terms of big marquee games. So, still several good games that I think we'll all kind of tune into, especially early in the day. While we're sitting around waiting for the Boilermakers and Huskies to kick off. But I think that Iowa USC game, it's intriguing to me, and that's probably the one that I'm most excited to watch.
Purdue football will take on Washington 7:00 Eastern in Seattle, and the Golden Black Radio post-game show will happen right after that. So catch Alan, Tom, Dub, Brian. We'll have the entire crew getting together. Nate as well on the Golden Black post-game show following Purdue and UW shortly after that game goes final, as we're your home for post-game shows after each and every Purdue football game. But guys, appreciate it. Tom, safe travels out there to Seattle. Good luck in that selfie with Dub, and we will talk to all you soon.
Take care, everybody. Be good.
It's Tom Bedard, Dub Jellison, and Alan Karpik, and that is our show, Golden Black Radio, brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Academy Sports and Outdoors, as well as Purdue Federal Credit Union, the official credit card for Purdue fans. East End Grill and Ripple and Company, 2 distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street in Lafayette. The Whitaker Inn for unparalleled company cuisine. Visit the Whitaker Inn, Sand Valley Resort, with cozy accommodations and farm-to-table dining. Sand Valley is where adventure and connection come together. Book your winter escape today at sandvalley.com. And finally, the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research, which has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. Don't forget that like and subscribe button, and you can leave a positive review, hopefully a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. We would really, really appreciate it. And also enable alerts if you haven't already. Enable alerts because we upload new content just about every day here at goldenblack.com, and you can get dinged and find out whenever we are uploading something new, whether it be Tom and another tremendous column, whether it be Brian and his thoughts, whether it be Dub on recruiting, all of it, any and all of it. Jordan on his great game previews. I want to shout out Jordan. I know Jordan listens to the show every week because he sends me texts about it all the time. Jordan's a great guy. We watched that Sweet 16 game together in Indy, and he's a big part of the goldenblack.com team as well. While you're at it, speaking of the goldenblack.com team, subscribe, right? If you haven't already, goldenblack.com. That's why we're here. It's the biggest Purdue community on the internet. Use promo code PU1 at checkout and get 2 months of your monthly subscription for just $1. $1 for your first 2 months, your monthly subscription at goldenblack.com by using our promo code PU1 for a limited time. Once again, Purdue-Washington postgame show will go on these same channels following tomorrow's game, so be sure to check back in then. Golden Black Radio returns on Tuesday. We will talk hoops coming off that tremendous win in Tuscaloosa with Brian Newber. We'll recap Purdue UW with Tom and Dub as well, and we'll get you set for the week for you Boilermaker fans with another edition of Golden Black Radio. But until next time, I'm Derek Schulltz. Enjoy the game. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you on Tuesday right here on Golden Black Radio.